Shalom, Michelle Gold here. Last time in part 2.
Jesus doesn't care about YouTube views. He's not looking and saying how many people are watching your videos. But I'm really glad you asked me this question because it's making me realize I need to start looking at that so I could keep wanting to do what I'm doing so that I don't give up and feel fruitless, So I'm really glad you asked me that. I've been secretly hoping that all the singers who have surpassed me now in Messianic Judaism, I've been secretly hoping that I've inspired them in some way. So when I get to heaven, I can get credit for making a difference.
Okay, so describe a Masonic Shabbat service. What is it like?
Messianic Shabbat service, it's more celebratory than a church service because, of course, in the back of my mind, I know my faith is forbidden by most Jews. So knowing that, there's even more celebration. It's like, well, I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm here. So there's that. There's the dancing. The dancing in the Messianic synagogue, to me, is the best invention ever. Because to sit back in a church and listen to amazing music for the Lord and lift my hands, I feel limits me. I am Pentecostal. My daughter doesn't like any of that. She isn't like a Nazarene, my daughter. She would love to just be a nice, quiet church. But I feel like, I get to be free. I get to, the Messianic congregation has a lot of a celebration, a lot of dancing, and of course, a lot of food. And I love that because not only are you getting food, but you are getting fellowship at a Messianic congregation, unless you go to a church where they eat together afterward, which most of them these days do not. Some of them do. But I feel like those things are advantageous to a young lady who wants to be part of a community. So now you're dancing. Now you're eating with people. Now you're sharing your problems and you're helping other people while you're eating. And a lot of the real ministry gets done while you're eating. I've had some profound conversations while eating with someone that I never would have had otherwise. So that's, to me, describes it. There's Hebrew prayers, and some congregations have the perfect balance of Hebrew prayers versus talking about deep, profound spiritual things, life application. And then other Messianic congregations have so many Hebrew prayers that you almost can't find God. You're like, where is God in this? We're just reading off prayers. It's very rote. It's very bland. So there are different kinds of Messianic congregations, and the ones that I like have a good balance between spirit and truth, between Hebrew and between relationship with God.
Yeah, so if someone were to come up and ask you, because sometimes with Masonic Judaism, sometimes people think it means like Jewish Christianity, and sometimes that people may misunderstand that. So what would you tell them is the difference between stepping into a church and then stepping into a Masonic synagogue?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you're saying if somebody asked me where they felt comfortable, where would I send them?
Yeah.
Personally, I want to recommend the Messianic congregation most of all, because I always feel that celebrating more and understanding the Jewishness of your Messiah, Jesus, is priority. Because as you deepen your understanding of the Jewishness of your Messiah, that means you're getting to know your Messiah more. So I would, at first glance, I'd say I recommend the Messianic synagogue. However, if I get to know the person and I see that they like a calm atmosphere, that they don't like a lot of Hebrew liturgy, that they need something quick, or they need something in particular to match their personality. For instance, my daughter has autism. And, for her, I'm not sure I'd recommend a Messianic synagogue. I sat with her the other day and I said, I think you'd be more comfortable in a Nazarene church because they understand and they love their Jewish roots, but it's a nice short service. There's no dancing. There's no jumping up and down. It's calm and it fits her personality. She likes things in order. She likes things to be short, but I still would require her to go to a Messianic synagogue for the holidays. So yeah, I feel like the Messianics have an understanding Yeshua at the fullest, but I wouldn't compromise comfort, and I wouldn't want to ruin somebody's relationship with God by forcing them to go to a congregation where they're not comfortable, you know? So I'd base the decision on what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, so sometimes people may generalize Judaism in general and think that all of them are the same. What do you think what makes a Masonic synagogue maybe stand apart compared to like conservative or Reform or Orthodox, for example?
Okay, well, the number one thing, of course, is that we believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. We believe Jesus is the Messiah. Now, if you go to a legalistic Messianic church, you may not see a difference. We went to one where they were so ultra into the Hebrew prayers. We had a visitor and he didn't know we believed in Jesus. He came and he left. And at the end of the service, on his way out, he said to my husband, "You guys believe in Yeshua here?" So that was sad. But yeah, that should be the one thing that sets us apart, is that we believe in Yeshua and that you can see and feel the spirit of the living God in that place. You ultimately, via prayer, via somebody praying over you or offering you a way to understand your relationship with God. When you go to synagogue, you're not going to hear a relationship about God with you and God usually. At a regular Jewish temple, besides not hearing about Jesus, you're probably not going to hear a lot about God. You might hear a smidge. They're going to talk a lot about social stuff, like being good to your neighbor. Oh, very nice things, being good to your neighbor and helping the poor. But you may or may not hear about God. And that would be sad, right?
So, like for Masonic Judaism, so you mean to say that Masonic Judaism, that each synagogue does it differently? So it's kind of like where they have one side of the spectrum to the other, like just how churches have different denominations. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I think a legalistic Messianic synagogue is like an Italian restaurant where they don't speak any English and they don't welcome anybody unless you speak Italian and you look Italian and you act Italian. It's almost like too much of a good thing, they're not including people, they're not making it relevant. But a good Messianic synagogue would be like an Italian restaurant that served all kinds of people, that made everybody feel welcome and not excluded, and that spoke your language, and so yeah, there are different kinds of Messianic synagogues ranging from legalistic to balanced. And then even if you have a balanced congregation, there are going to be some that do too much Hebrew prayer for you. And funny thing, the Jewish people, my Jewish friends who believe in Jesus, complain the most about too much Hebrew prayer. Believe it or not, I can't figure out why. Psychologically, I've been trying to figure out why is it that people who are Christian and get into Messianic Judaism want the too many Hebrew prayers, want the legalistic, they want the rules. I don't get it. I think it's because it come out of Catholicism, which is very rule orientated. And deep down, they might be wounded. They might feel that they have to win God's love. They can't accept that they get it for free. So they want these rules and they keep trying to put them on me. And I don't want them. I just want to fall in love with the Lord and celebrate Judaism and Jesus without all these rules around my neck. So they're very different. They can range from balanced to unbalanced.
So what are some feasts or holidays that you enjoy?
That's a good question. Nowadays, my favorite is Sukkot, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, because of the meaning behind it. The meaning behind it is that it shows how God kept the Jews safe when they were wandering in the desert by covering them. Forgive me if I get this wrong, Jessica. With a fire by night and a cloud by day. Yeah. And how they didn't feel like they were settled in their place, that they were constantly wandering and God kept them protected. So we build these little sukkah houses on our lawns. One year we couldn't afford one, so I just got my kids a tent and I had them sleep in their bedrooms. But that's the most meaningful to me. That's my favorite because it reminds you that you're not a citizen of this earth. You're a citizen of heaven. And that heavenly things make happier things. Heavenly minds make happier people. When you think more about your next life rather than this life, it lands you in a happier place. So that whole concept, I love it. I love the concept of God protecting me under a tent. I love the idea that I can live in God and he can live in me. And there's that whole beautiful analogy about him living in me living in him, me living in a tent, the Israelites living in a tent. And then, of course, I love traveling. So that's kind of cool too, all the traveling. But yeah, I think that's my favorite. Of course, there's so many, there's Passover, and I also like Yom Kippur because Yom Kippur is a very pivotal time in my life where I almost gave up on Yeshua. I hung out with some really religious Jews and they convinced me that maybe Jesus is not the Messiah. And so I apologized for believing in him. And then I did my own research. I thought for myself, I found that he is the Messiah. And so the following Yom Kippur, I got to celebrate that he forgave me from my sins. And it was a world of a difference between a Yom Kippur where I rejected Jesus and a Yom Kippur where I received him. So that's kind of special too. And my mom and I have a beautiful memory of singing and throwing bread off the bridge a year before she died. So very special. And it's hard not to be happy because you're not supposed to really be totally joyful. You're supposed to be sad because you're reflecting about this, but it's hard because I kind of want to be joyful. So it's kind of a funny holiday to me too. It's like supposed to be observing something serious. And so I'm a big goofball, so I get joyful. And yeah, so that's a favorite. I like Yom Kippur. I don't like fasting though. I sometimes will just fast TV or something. So that part, as I said, I'm not a big rule person. I treasure my relationship with God more than I treasure rules, unless they're actually in the Bible. So I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't think me fasting is gonna hurt anybody if I don't fast. Plus, I'm pre-diabetic, so fasting is scary for me. So that didn't happen this year. I did not fast.
Okay, so what songs have been your favorites to record and why?
Favorite songs to record. Oh, well, Ima is on my mind because I wrote it for my mom. That was my favorite because I wrote it for her 60th birthday. I was too poor to buy her a gift. I sat in Starbucks and prayed to the heavens I could write a song because I'm not one to write on demand. I usually just wait till I get inspired. So with that song, I actually sat down and within 2 hours, I wrote that for her. So that one's a favorite because it fully describes my mom to a T. It fully describes the joys and the struggles of growing up with a bipolar mom. It talks about their ideal thinking, how they imagine the stars are pink diamonds, the ridiculous thinking in their minds, that the clouds are fur, that you could dance your worries away. But then it also celebrates the childlike faith of a person who feels they could dance their worries away. And a person who feels that hope never dies is something we all aspire to be like. So, we can learn even from the kookiness of people's behavior that we need to have that childlike faith. And so, yeah, that's a favorite. I like Who Will Go because it challenges you to go reach the lost. And I hope that's what my life is about. I hope that when I die, people will say that I focused on sharing the bread and sharing the wine. And so that one, and it's also based on Isaiah chapter 6, where God calls Isaiah and he really doesn't want to go. And he says, I have unclean lips. And God says, well, then who will go? So I really like that one. And of course, the matching scripture in Romans is kind of hilarious in a Jewish accent. How will they know if no one tells them? How will they hear if nobody spoke it? What are you going to do? And then you can break into a Whitney Houston song. How will they know if you never tell them? How will they know? Sorry. You know that song? How will I know?
No.
I rewrote it for Jesus.
Yeah, so you have a song for everything. It's everything with that stuff thought that comes through your head. You always have a song for it.
Yes, I try. I try.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate what you said in the interview. I appreciate it. I'm gonna stop the recording so that way I can tell you something God told me to say. I'm gonna stop the recording real quick, okay?
Hi, Michelle Gold here. Thank you so much for listening to this interview. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe on my YouTube page and check out michellegold.com/music. God bless you. Shalom.